for this event. It's the kickoff event really for the week of programming that's here at Northeastern University, not only on our campus, but throughout the 13 campuses. It's the Sustainability Innovation Week. And I'm proud to be a part of Mills College and our productions, our activities on our campus. We were going to focus a little bit on certain aspects of sustainability. Our approach to sustainability is specifically always to forefront social, economic, and environmental aspects of these issues, like climate action, like environmental justice, and social change. So as our dean has often said, I think you might be online out there, so I might be stealing your script here. Our dean has often said that we don't simply take on sustainability as a matter of, well, what I would say is like scientific approaches or to prolong the availability of resources like land and water and these essential parts of survival that are endangered right now. They're endangered by capitalism, by greed, by mismanagement and gross misunderstanding about what it is to be in relation with land. What is a good relationship to the natural world and our many relatives that cohabitate this globe. So what we ask ourselves is about creating a world that is worthy of sustaining, because there are many elements right now that we don't want to continue. So we have to look at the status quo and realize that we do not want to continue some elements at all, but it needs to change. So in that way, we're imagining our event tonight. We wanted to think about the ways some of the good people in Oakland and the Bay Area community here, or Northern California community, have become engaged in activism and knowledge sharing that is rooted in community organizations, specifically BIPOC organizations, Indigenous, Black, and POC organizations. We wanted to highlight how in many ways as learners, we can educate ourselves in different approaches to sustainable communities and practices that uplift the folks of color, for example, when much of the impact of pollution and the disastrous ways of cities and countries have torn up the environment, and have left our communities devastated in too many ways. Our guest tonight, Cielo Flores, will share with us a little bit about their road, and as our guest speaker will share their journey with Black and Indigenous POC organizations up here in the Northern California area, their training in land stewardship through community engagement. We know Cielo, our friend and community, is always paying tribute to the community organizations and the elders that have helped him, and also those that have uplifted by the ways we're uplifted by those that have gone before. We're going to highlight the importance of culturally grounded practices of land stewardship and some of the best ways that we can contribute as BIPOC communities to climate action, environmental justice, and social change. I think I said that before, right? But what I'm talking about then is sustainability of our ways, sustainability of ancient ways, our survivability, I guess you could say, as folks with history in lands. We're talking about then cultural sustainability and social sustainability, and we can't separate those from the language of specifically environmental, et cetera, because our people who were here on these lands, including the Ohlone, never separated these out. When you learn from those kinds of organizations that come from long traditions, you'll find that they're not separated, and we have to look in those ways. So it's Sustainability Innovation Week, and the innovation that's being talked about tonight is not new. But don't say new, it's old ways. It's returning to old ways, and what's new about it is giving voice to those practices and forefronting them, giving voice to organizations and peoples who have not been heard, who have not had a chance to lead because we get silenced, right? So I think that's what we're offering in this and many other activities, and the way we approach this is to look at a different angle. And we would say that at this time, it would be innovative to do that. I'm grateful to Cielo for sharing a bit tonight about navigating the many opportunities they've had in working with BIPOC community through both volunteer and paid roles. As many of you know, Cielo always first to make those connections between our relationship to land, water, and the living relatives. We're always making conscious efforts to focus on Indigenous peoples and always deeply connected to sustaining ourselves, our spirit, and finding one's heart work in the world. So I'll introduce Cielo Flores, is a two-spirit community organizer and aspiring urban farmer. He is a descendant of the Nahua communities of Cuscatán, which is also El Salvador. They were raised here in Huchum and in these Ohlone territories of the Bay Area. Their work currently focuses on queer and trans communities, specifically around youth empowerment and wellness. Sorry, I lost my place. Cielo's journey back to the land started in 2020 at the beginning of COVID pandemic and has taken them down a beautiful path of collective learning and deep ancestral remembrance. Their dream is to support a community garden for intersectional communities in the local area as a place of cultural preservation, spiritual healing, and provide free produce for our members and our community. As a witness to some of Cielo's journey, I am reminded that it matters how we make our way, how we find our paths. The knowledge is something that is shared in community. It is a legacy handed down to us. And I appreciate Cielo so much for the integrity that they bring and the courage it takes in us, in each of us, to have faith and even adventure, be open to adventure, right? To not really knowing, because you have to take the road as it comes. We take risks sometimes to get rolling on our learning journey, which is a working journey, right? In the midst of university, we're oftentimes faced with some big assumptions of where knowledge lies and the proper approach to attaining it. I love seeing Cielo and so much of our BIPOC communities find the people, the teachers, the elders, and the cultural workers who have an abundance of experience handed down to them. And they share that knowledge that is so essential to privileging Indigenous traditions from all around the world, from Africa, from Japan, from the islands of Oceania. I'm inspired when I hear all the places Cielo has been and all the ways they vision and impact the future for our communities through collaborative and collective work, especially in Indigenous, queer, BIPOC, trans, gender nonconforming, and LGBTQIA peoples. Yeah, so with no further ado, I will ask Cielo to come on up. And I give you this offering of tobacco, my friend, as we do. Tobacco, we made the call, we put the call out and you answered that. This is some papaya, just a little bit, right? Just a little bit, because it's a good road. Thank you.
Wow, so excited. Good job for being here and yeah, being interested in what I have to share today. This has been a long journey, and even to prep this moment, it feels like a big moment to present and share what I've been doing for the past 4 years. So, yeah. Thank you, Z, also for that introduction. It's getting me emotional.
It's okay, you got this.
But yeah, so I'll probably be jumping around a lot. I like to kind of weave stories together too, and just kind of speak, just share, you know. Yeah. So my journey kind of started in a long time ago, I would say, as a child. I was always kind of interested in plants and nature, and bugs and mud and things like that. But my ancestral roots are in Cuscatán, also known as El Salvador. My folks are from the villages of San Vicente. And I've always had that interest. I grew up here in Huchum, in Oakland. And my road took me all the way to San Vicente University, where I wanted to start this journey and study environmental science. You know, I wanted to study environmental racism and talk about the pollution in Oakland and how those things impacted the lives, you know, of young folks, of children, of families. And I was pushed out of the major. So we know that the institutions aren't always places where our knowledges are honored. And I took a road of studying Latin American and Latino studies in Santa Cruz. But I focused my studies on gender health and migration. And in the same way, trying to understand how land and movement of our peoples is connected and how gender it impacts all of that, you know, that whole journey. From there, I started learning a little bit more about myself. So this is going to be a personal kind of also share of how I've been growing and getting to know myself. I started organizing for Latinx students, me being one of them on my campus. And from there, I kind of stuck with that of like youth organizing, queer and trans empowerment for our communities, and to what I do now, queer empowerment. And now I'm looking at where we find more health, where we find more healing, collectively together, but also within these institutions. You know, there are structures that already exist around us, and how do we make sure that this is actually sustaining our communities, supporting our children, our families, you know, highlighting and honoring who we are. And so I see myself being kind of like a tree. I'm gonna break this presentation down as like my sprouting phase, my sapling phase, and then what I feel like is now flourishing. And so, yeah, my journey also started with, right, my physical body, pains that I had, understanding healing modalities, finding my way, if you will. Pandemic started to happen. We had to all go locked down. My work became remote work on a computer inside a house all day. And I hated it. I completely hated it. I needed to be with community. I had signed up to do a job that was empowering young folks. And how do we do that via computer, you know, when we're not meeting each other face to face? So from there, you know, I made that jump. I kind of took a risk and I was like, my body's not loving this anymore. I'm at a computer, stuck at a desk. I can't do this anymore, you know? So I opened up and started exploring healing modalities, exploring acupuncture and cupping, all these things, you know, to try to just address the pains in my own body that I was experiencing. And from there, it kind of opened up a lot of what is ancestral practices, what are my people's practices, what is the land trying to tell me, you know, and how we can heal with the land when we go back, right? And one of my organizers from the work I was doing at a nonprofit basically told us and enlightened us that, you know, we all have a place in this movement. Whatever the movement is, we all have a place in it. If you're a creative, if you're an artist, if you're a scientist, if you're a cook, you're an advocate, right? There's a place for everyone in this movement. You know? Slides. Yeah. But let's get those slides. Put the slides up real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those were like my beginning moments, these kind of thoughts that were landing in me physically, also in my body of like, what am I doing? I love this work with queer and trans youth, but I also need stuff and I need my own healing as well, you know? So from there, I took kind of like a risk. I jumped. I was like, I'm actually want to sign up for this herbalism class. Like, I've never done anything like that. I don't really know if it's for me. I mean, I got pushed out of this environmental science major, so I'm kind of like, is it still possible for me to learn, you know? And so from there, it went, I was really inspired by that last piece, right? So that we all have a place in this movement. So it's all about where do I fit in? What is it that I love, you know? What is it that calls me? From there, I went on and felt like I just dived deeper, you know, became like a young tree, like a sapling. You know, I started focusing on community healing spaces, exploring my own emotional and also spiritual growth and how those things are connected. But it all really was happening with community and on the land, on land projects, but also it was like a moment of exploration of learning from other folks, right? I had a lot of questions and a lot of unknown things that began to resolve themselves or open up. As I just kept showing up to community events, community volunteer days, And from there on, I kept building a vision of like, what is it that I see that my community needs? And moving through that. So we can go to the next slide. Again, there's a slide there. We all have a place in this movement. Go to the next slide. I feel like my journey has been a lot of guiding, right, by intuition, as well as ancestral energies, right? My biggest takeaways are that we also have to ask for permission to these plants and these natural resources, right? That we have to build a relationship with them. It's not just about, oh, I'm extracting and taking, right? From the herbalism class, we also, I started to notice that, yeah, people can make medicine, but where's the spiritual component, right? Are we talking about the plant in its entirety, or is it just the plant? Is it a living being? Is it our relative? Or is it just something we're continuing to extract from? And from there, right, it was really learning that people are the seeds. We are seeds. Each one of us has our own lineages and our own stories and histories. And we are those seeds if we continue to tap into that, right? Seeds are the people, and they represent so much more than just, hey, there's one thing that's gonna go into the ground. Next slide. So here I have a picture of Chichon Tepec. It's the volcano range that's where my family's from. And it's kind of like where my beginning story came, just understanding that my folks, really were with the land, they grew up in the villages, and that was very, very inspirational for me. I did a lot of like exploring within the herbalism class. Like they made us go way back. What are our family's traditions with agriculture and those practices of harvesting. Yeah, and it inspired me a lot. There's a lot I could share about that, but I feel like that's way history going back. And what I wanted to focus on was a little bit of just kind of like what the learnings that I had. And so if we can go to the next slide. The conversation with Sesemana, right? So that was it, the herbalism program that I did with Ancestral Apothecary, and they're no longer under the schools are under a different name now. But it was really the introduction moment of understanding that these plants carry energies, that there's a history of a relationship to plants, and the medicines that they carry, and the medicines that they carry can profoundly change our own emotional, physical state of body. We talk about somatics and things like that, right? That these traditional practices have existed way before just this current modern world, right? We talk about traditional Chinese medicine, and their friends even in this room here that, again, are a testament that we are all carrying that medicine ancestrally, Again, right, so I was going through my own body pains and exploring all these modalities. It was really just an opening moment of like, there's a lot of knowledge here that already exists, and I'm just like at the beginning of it, So I started also volunteering with Spiral Gardens, which is in Berkeley. Again, I was just trying to find a place where, where can I be with the plants as much as possible, So I recommend checking them out. They have nice starter plants and things like that. But they were the beginning place where I kind of just started this journey. On the next slide. And from there, it was really like, I just really want to dive deep into this. And I started volunteering with Sogarte. Shout out to them. They're doing a lot of amazing work. And I would say it feels like time has stopped in a way for me when I think about the idea that we need to do this everywhere, right? It's time, we needed to rematriate and give land back to Native people since the beginning. And I had a lot of questions in my mind. What does it mean, right? If my ancestors are in Cuscatlan, if they're buried in El Salvador, what is it that I'm doing here? What is my role here in Uchun, right? This is Ohlone territory. What's my purpose? What's my role now to support those communities where I'm at? These are the lands that raised me, right? Going to see the waterfront over there in Emeryville, right? Over there in the West Open Port, right there. All those waters where I went as a kid to have fun, to explore, but not really understanding that, no, this is native land, this is sacred land, And it was when I was volunteering on the land there, one of the projects, one of the homies really said that the land also wants us back, right? That Mother Earth, is also calling for us to return as well. So these were guiding questions and my own reflections of opening and trying to reflect on what it is that what I'm doing, what is my purpose here? I'm like, my ancestors are over there. I was brought, my family came here from El Salvador, fleeing the war. And what is my role here now? You know, okay, we did college, we did that was fun, did the, nonprofit, but what is it that I want? You know, what is it that will radiate and sustain my own community as well? So this is like, again, maybe what folks would consider decolonial practices, or I was just opening my mind and beginning to question everything. Yeah, go to the next slide. So rematriation is, I think, key to what it is that we are reconstructing the society's relation to Mother Earth. When I thought about land back, I thought it was only like, okay, just a conversation here, but as I traveled, I had got to go to Chiapas in Mexico to liberate Zapatista land for a gathering there. It was really, again, another eye-opening moment of like land back and giving land back is a thing that is necessary for communities to become sovereign nations, right? And it's to limit ourselves just with the borders of these countries, that again is colonialism, right? That if we talk about land back, it has to be all the Turtle Island for all indigenous communities around the world, you know? And then also, like, if we keep talking about decolonial and decolonizing, it's still focusing on those who are oppressors, focusing on that versus, hey, we actually have to focus on indigenous-led communities, communities that themselves are telling us what we need to do, how we should fall in line, right? And again, it was just a big moment of questioning the systems, questioning these terms. Even environmental science that we talk about sustainability, it's for who and for what, you know? Are these sustainable practices actually, again, giving land back to our native communities, you know? Honoring their traditions. So again, these are just, again, reflections of big moments that I was having in myself. And gearing towards like the sapling phase, I feel like then at that point I was like, I'm asking myself these big questions. What is it that we're doing? How do we honor the native communities where I grew up, where I'm about to travel, you know? So this what's the dance do, you know? Say, hey, little plant, I see you, you know? But that's the point, right? Is we're building relations. So it is taking a moment to slow down, right? To notice the changes, to notice these relatives that are around us. Sometimes you see those trees and it's like, why do trees look so pretty? Say they're speaking to you. They're trying to share something with you, right? And being open to receive that, right? Notice those changes that are happening around us. And so those are some reflections that I've had so far in just these learnings, some of the bigger takeaways. And I'll share on this one part now. Right now, I'm actually getting the chance to learn Nahuatl from El Salvador.
Is this the right thing or for?
Yeah, we're on the point right there on flourishing.
Thank you.
So I've been having the opportunity to learn my community's native language, or one of the many native languages in Gustarlan. And this was a Maya symbol for also seeds. Kiani, sorry, my slides are not messing up. And it represents star seeds. It represents the creation of the maíz. It's connected to the energy of the rabbit, which is also fertility, which is also the moon cycles. And it's representative of the sacred four directions and the cosmic creation of life. So again, this is it spoke to me so strongly, like the design it has made me see portals, but also a reflection of that, the seeds, right? The seeds are the beginning, but they're also the end. They are the end and they are the beginning, right? When we harvest seeds, it's like, oh, the flower had to go through its whole cycle to become a seed. So it's the end, but it's the seed and it has all the potential to regenerate again. And that felt so cosmic. It just felt like, forget time, we gotta go based on the seasons. Like, it's like the energy is changing. It's like, why focus ourselves on this Gregorian calendar, right? And again, this is some things we're learning in the permaculture class. We don't always have to follow ourselves based on this calendar, on this model clock that we have, right? Our ancestors followed the cosmic calendar, the cosmic time, the changing of the seasons based on the moon, based on the sun cycles, right? They were again observant enough to create these and map these things out, right? And how are we following that? No. Not many of us, but again, it's a way to aspire. It's like, yeah, when is Lunar New Year? It's like, that's ancient, right? It's not just a whole different culture, different thing. It's profoundly related to the land as well. And so from there, I was like, okay, I did this permaculture is cool, I wanna keep doing this. I was like, I wanna be a land steward, you know, and I wanna have a community garden for queer and trans people in Oakland. I think that'd be great, you know? But I didn't quite feel ready yet, you know? And I ended up finding another program that was specifically for queer and trans people in New York. The next slide, please. And I found myself on my way to New York. There was a queer farmers program there that was training folks to use all the tools to basically produce enough large scale planting, large scale, you know, rows and beds. But the goal was there to be in production for a CSA. They also gave us business management, teachings, how they do what they do, how the budget is a huge component of it, but money talks, right? It also tells the story of why these organizations need the funding they do to continue doing the work that they do. And we were up over there in the Hudson Valley. I don't know if folks are familiar with the Hudson Valley in New York. That's Mohican and Lenape territories. But it was really, you know, I'm a city kid. That really threw me for a spin. I was like, I gotta get to New York. I want to be in a rural community. I want to see if I can do it. You know, if I can really live this life, because it is a different pace, right? You're following the schedule of the sun, not just your clock, right? And it was eye-opening to know that there were many queer farmers in the Hudson Valley, and that they were actually building and cultivating their own network to help distribute these goods, right? There were some queer farmers who were, you know, doing the CSA, but then there were some queer farmers who had like what you call that, a dairy farm, doing organic milk and organic meat, you know, processing all these things. And so the pandemic really hit this community hard as well. I mean, it hit all of us, right? Like, but this organization changed their model in order to be able to provide CSA boxes to the city of New York. And that is what continued to sustain them as well, kept them in business as well, was, hey, we have to get this produce can't just stay here in the Hudson Valley. It has to travel to the city of New York, you know? And so there was a network building there where I felt really inspired by it. It's like, I don't have to leave Oakland. I don't have to like go super far away. It's like, there is a way to relate the rural, these agro cities, you know, to the cities that we live in now. So I'm just still inspired by that and trying to see what that looks like here in the Bay. But they're amazing, check them out. Shout out to them, Rock City Farms. And the next program I did after that, which I actually just graduated from this year, or end of last year, was a local project with Agroecology Commons, their BAFT program. I don't know if folks are familiar with that, Bay Area Farmer Trainers Program. And again, that was a deeper dive into farming business, like the logistic talk of like, how do we get land? What is large scale production, right, and operation practices. And it was really cool because we got to travel all throughout NorCal, Sacramento, El Sobrante, Fresno, Gurnsville, Napa, right? We know some of these places are big agro communities, right? So how are these practices being implemented by local farmers? What are their ways of organizing? Some folks own their property. Some folks are in collective models and co-op models. So again, it was like a big learning moment of like, oh, these are the logistical ways one can steward land. How do we get to the land? You know, if I'm in the city, how do we get there? You know, and it was really also inspiring because again, it was like farmers from all over, people from all over California. Folks travel. I think folks travel everywhere, obviously, but it seemed to me that there was a lot of people from different states that were coming to California specifically to learn these ways of agriculture. And that has a lot of cool resources too. They have a tool lending library. There's another fellowship too that you can again do in incubator with one of the main farm sites. You know, we have the opportunity to go back and build a relationship with those farmers and do an internship. They also have volunteer days locally. It's in El Sobrante. They do a tractor training as well. They taught us about seed saving, grafting, following more in depth with greenhouse management. All things that are necessary for full-scale production of a farm. So yeah, that was, you know, the more business element. I was really interested in that. I was like, I need to know the numbers. I need to know the math. What are the laws around that in California? So that was really focusing on that as well. Because by then I had already been on the farm. I knew the the tools, I knew some of the things of seasons and, permaculture design, why things go where they go, and these relations. But I was just really interested in like, okay, so who are queer trans people who are organizing for this? How are we getting our Spanish speaking communities access and like really having it be like they are the ones stewarding the land, they're not just working the land. So there's a lot of like skill sharing within that space too, which was really powerful to learn again from other elders, other young folks in that space. Cool. And so now I did want to share just more organizations in the Bay Area that I've either volunteered at or that I've learned from. There's many on this list here, so Verte Land Trust, again, you volunteer with them. I also give a drop to go check their website out. They have many resources there to dive deeper in these conversations of how we can give back, how we can support their work. Soul Flower Farm, again, it's a Black-owned farm and herbalist community that they're building in El Sobrante. The Cultural Conservatory as well, they're in the Petaluma, Sonoma region. Also doing indigenous land back kind of work, culture, keeping as well, saving. These sites will also go out, we'll send these out. Planting Justice, again, they're connected to more here in Oakland. There's all kinds of stuff. There's folks that are at the farmers market. There are folks who have their land projects. So again, these are just like a quick list of community members that are either doing education around environmental sustainability with BIPOC communities, or for example, even Mandela Grocery, they're a co-op, Black-led co-op, Black-owned co-op, sustaining their farmers from outside California, and also bringing again those vegetables and that produce into Oakland as well. Look at that, explore those communities. I also taught for a second with my student youth network, as an educational garden teacher. So I kind of wore many hats before. I really am inspired by the young folks. And that's kind of where I'm at now in my life, where I want to continue blending these healing modalities, these ancient conversations of traditional medicine and healing, but it really opening it up to our young folks, right? Like, it took me 30 years to get here, I was like, and I wish that somebody could have made that easier for me as a kid to be like, hey, maybe college isn't the route, but these are other routes that you can take, right? And just finding joy with the plants. It's not just about, taking. It's like, hey, can I just be, where can we go? Where can we the garden projects? And so the next slide, I share a quote from an ancestor, Auntie Monica Hastings Smith. She left the song lyric for us that said, the winds will come and go, but the roots are strong, right? And there's a lot to say there, but it's really a conversation of these, the medicines that we are the roots as well, that we have to build these networks together. And so a lot of these organizations already know about each other and are threading each other, but again, this isn't work that's just work, right? This is our life. A lot of us are finding healing through this, so it's more than just this present moment, right? It's like our roots are continuing to grow, and we're trying to like hold on for what's coming our way, So you can also find her music on YouTube, so I won't give Auntie Monica a plug. If you have children, her music is for them. And just to recap again, I think I've been guided by, again, has been my intuition and the ancestral energies, following the sacred alchemy, water, fire, earth, and wind, and how those elements have shaped everything. They are the seasons. They are also, they're all around us. They're the precious resources that literally give us life. And so without this balance, this guidance from them, where would we be? Where would I be? Also following the animals and the plant relatives, honoring them as entire beings, and not just like, oh, you're just a piece of the forest. It's like, no, the birds are with us, even in the city, and that indigenous knowledge also, that's where it is. It's like all these things are already embedded and related together. And to honor those ancient ways, to go back is not to go back, it's to actually preserve for the future, These are the things that move me, and I find a lot of meaning and healing. And so these are the things that have just shaped my path. And would have guided me to be like, hey, yeah, you should do that. Take that next job, take that next opportunity, take that lesson, you know? And also understanding that like, yeah, maybe it was better that I didn't get into environmental science in the college setting, because what I've been learning now is that all these stories, I've been learning from stories, people's ancestral stories, their grandfathers, their grandmothers, who were farmers, who were agriculturists, land keepers, you know, who lived more connected to these elements, right? It's like, we don't sustain ourselves from the market, no, we had to go fish and get our food, or we had to go actually be in relationship with the animals that give us milk and all these things, right? So it's going back to the basics, but it's also like, I think we've been removed from the basics and in not honoring. So that's what guides me right now. It's like how to go back, but also honoring that it's not going back, it's bringing back to the present. Not just, hey, looking at history, no, we are the history, we're gonna make the history, and continue honoring those ancestors that did it before us, you know, and honoring them. And another note too is just like what's powerful about the moment too is that as two-spirit people, queer and trans communities, we are also learning from our ancestors. You know, a lot of us don't have also sometimes good connections with our families, but a lot of us also don't have our elders around. Just history and life, right? That happens to us, but that when we take this path, or what I felt like really powerful is that I feel like a bridge, you know, that I'm learning from these aunties and all of those, right? They might not see me as a trans person, they might not understand what all that means, but I know that I'm learning and like being a bridge, gathering those seeds, learning, right, from these elders in our communities, and in a way also adapting them, right? Adapting that for what it is our community needs us giving. Again, the dreams that the Spirit had is still big, you know? And because we are here, we are adapting that knowledge, and we're making it so that we recognize our own trans spirits, so that, you know, we're going back before gender became a thing, you know? It's like really, really, really decoding all of these conversations, right? Before they gendered our spirits, you know, we're here learning all these ways and adapting so that we can be seen and we can pass this on, right? So there's profound magic there too, but it's like, I've learned this from other people, and it's because of people in my community and my peers that I've been able to get here as well, and have these downloads and have these learnings. It just didn't happen just because I'm also volunteering, it's because we're in community, we're talking, we're sharing, we're being vulnerable, we're breaking these molds, right? We're really trying to get to the heart of things, right? Find those elements within us as well. And I leave you there. I leave you a little bit there. Some book recommendations that helped me in this time. Again, is Braiding Sweetgrass, The Four Agreements, Farming While Black has a lot of history. Nuestra Medicina by Cielo Flores is a lot of more energetic curanderismo conversations. And then a new one that I haven't finished just yet, but The Seven Circles. It's like healing modalities, the indigenous ways. I forgot, I didn't put the full title down, but y'all should check it out. It's really good. Seven Circles? Oh, Nuestra Medicina. By Cielo Flores. Yeah, and that's it. That's my share today. So now, open to questions, right? Yeah, you can have a little conversation. I shared as much as I could. I didn't want to bore you with too much history of my own life, but you know, but this is where we conversate, right? This is where there's questions and we go from there.
I just want to say thank you so much. Appreciate it if you could use the mic, because then the people in Zoom can hear you.
Hello, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I really learned a lot today. I really appreciated yeah, it's just really felt the ancestral medicine that you bring through your work and the way that you share about it. And so that's I'm receiving that really well. And also, yeah, one of my questions, really, I have so many, but I'm just gonna start with one. Is if you could like find like one or two guiding principles that you feel really strongly that like keep you grounded and guided in specifically this work, what would that be? Like, what seeds would you offer to others doing this work or future generations?
I think it's a great question. It's like, my mind is like exploding in like 20 different directions.
Go man, go.
I think what really comes to mind is the idea of healing 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. Doing the work with queer and trans kids, like we don't have that many elders already, so they're already looking up to people like ourselves as those elders, and I'm like, hey, I'm just learning. I just got here too, I'm still learning, and I'm still trying to figure it out, right? But to know that the land and community gardens are like the key piece there, like elders come and pull up to the garden because that's what they do, right? Like that's how they heal. But it's like, if I'm looking for an elder, I would have more chances of meeting someone and talking to someone on a farm, on a garden, right, than on a train, right? So kind of what comes to mind is that we're kind of like a bridge. All of us are bridges to some extent, yeah, I think that's my main guiding principle there, that they're like young people are looking up to us, and that's why my drive is to like make have this merging this of like queer trans liberation, youth empowerment through a garden and an actual living space, right? It's not just like, hey, this farm, it's like not just to produce stuff, but it's like, hey, like this is ancestral, right? Like, these are our communities that have been doing this forever, and finding power in that versus like, oh, that's just like, oh, we left the campo, kind of out here. It's like there's power there. They took us off our lands, right? Our community lands for a reason.
Other questions from anyone? Take your time.
Yeah, any question?
Thank you so much for all the stories you read. It's really powerful and magical, and I'm grateful for the residents you have, or all the fun things that ever get to be in community with the residents for your community and for yourself. I would love to, I feel like maybe it's a part 2 Black Gap, but I would love to hear more of what supported you and reconnecting to permaculture, Plantita, medicina, back in our, in our like motherland country, when there was a lot of intentional severing of that knowledge, and I'd love to talk to you one-on-one too, but how did you go about that when there aren't a lot of books about, herbalism and medicina and cosmovisión from Cuscatlán or Centroamérica? And I know a lot of that is held through oral tradition, oral storytelling, kind of like what you're practicing and keeping this cultural practice and knowledge alive. Just how did you go about that?
I mean, I guess I go back to the way back story where it really kind of opened me to all of this was my grandma's passing. She left an aloe plant in the backyard, and I remember she had a garden. When I went to go visit her, and there's a garden in her house. It was like literally the mini garden and then the kitchen, and it was like the 2 things existed together. And it was like a central part of her house. And when the pandemic hit, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I hate, my job. Like, oh my God, all these things. This Savila plant kept like shining at me, kept looking at me, and I just was like, I need to know more about this plant. And I started taking care of this aloe plant. That was my grandma's aloe plant. I still have it on my steps in my house, and it kind of really started there, understanding that I'm like, wait, I think I'm being called to be with the garden. I'm being called to be in this way, and I didn't really know why. And kind of just leaning into that unknown. That has been able to kind of like spearhead like, oh, actually, this is a lot, there's a lot of medicine here. And I need to look, I want to know more. I just want to learn more. So I think I just jumped in that way of like, there's a lot that is erased, but I don't know because also my grandma's passed. It's just not here anymore. But the more I kept being with the land, so we were sharing, I guess another story was Cielo Flower Farm, and we were doing the permaculture program there. Again, Maya is doing an amazing job of approaching permaculture design, but in a way that we're exploring our spirituality, right? And it's not just our spirit, but it's our ancestral spirit, right? And we would also try the medicines that she was making, herbal medicine. From there, you know, I would have also experiencing the feeling of my uncles who used to tend to corn, the mills in Salvador. So their presence, their energies would become really loud and really at the forefront of my heart. And I'm like, wow, like, you know, Maya was the first person who let me also grow corn. Like I put the first corn seeds down on that program with her, and it just felt like so much was blooming within myself. Like it was just these downloads that were happening, you know. As I was like experiencing what it is to put corn in the ground, you know, and I don't know, those were the energies that was what was guiding me. I was like, this is, I just felt like the right time and the right place. Like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I just kept getting these affirmations, you know, and the more the corn grew or the more the plants just flourished, I was just like, wow, like this is magic right before me, you know, and wanting to just know more. Just always being accepting that I'm like, oh my God, if people have been doing agriculture for so many years, I'm just learning this. It's like 5% of like what could be a lifetime of learning, you know? Yeah, and also being like, let's go to the next city, the next context, the next state. It's like the same plant, there's different medicines here. And some folks use this root, but in this part, people use the leaves over here of this plant, right? So just there's just an infinite amount of knowledge there. And I'm kind of a nerd for that, right? So I'm just like, I want to know more. What's the book? Where's the, you know, the resource? How can I look this up? So I spent a lot of time after Semana just looking at the plants that spoke to me, and that felt good in my body, eating and taking as tea and stuff. I just had to go back and research more, you know? So that's kind of what guided me in that way to want to know more. Yeah, I don't know if that addresses the piece of like the erased history, you know, that's another piece, and that was intentional, but knowing that, yeah, that we're in the deep state of remembrance, you know, that was also probably a guiding principle too. Somebody had taught me that to that. If we say you forgot, then we allow the colonizers to win. We're saying, hey, we're remembering, we're part of this movement of land back. It's not just like, oh, I'm here as a farmer, and I was like, no, this is a deeper conversation that we're having, you know? But yeah, just keep it, yeah, I'll leave it there.
To ask a little bit about well, what's popping up in my head is that we're in root practice and root work. That is, you're talking about a lifetime journey of healing, of finding who we are, and it's wrapped up in where we're going, what work we're gonna do, what work we need to do right now, what work we find for ourselves. I think there's an ideal that we'll find our heart's work. And sometimes it takes a long time to get there, but it also takes brave decisions about, okay, I'm gonna go into this area and it don't pay so great right now, or I got volunteered to learn a little bit about it, so I can learn about, yeah. And okay, simultaneously that hard work of our own healing. Not everybody's gonna go and become a farmer, but there's medicine there in nature. I wanted to ask you about those places and times where, what did you do in nature besides the farm, the work part? What can anybody do when you're, like, the moments when you found your relation to, I don't know, water, dirt, or that anybody can tap into, that was helping and calming you, or like that helped in that other work, which is healing. Because I think personally, you might have talked about it here and there, like a trip to a river or something like that. But in your journey and working, like
Can you speak to some of those moments where you discover, ooh, when I sit with this, when I do that? And that other people can tap into, even if they're not gonna go on that same journey as you are, because their work is something else.
I think that's a conversation about energy as well, and a lot of people don't, they're like, oh, it's a little strange, a little too far, abstract, you know? But I think what comes to mind is the conversation of the elements for me. And I also do crystal work, I wrap crystal jewelry, and when I talk to the young folks about it, it's also like, why do things speak to you? Why do colors call you? Why are you attracted to certain things versus others, right? And it's like, that's part of the intuition. But in order to tap into that is also like understanding like our heartbeat is an electrical pulse. We are literally the minerals out in the universe, in the water that we are made of. Iron, what is this, magnesium? You know, we have all these like minerals in our bodies with an electrical heartbeat pulse, right? That it's like when you go to the ocean, when you go stand on earth, right, with no shoes, you are moving ions and recharging, remineralizing your body. Right, and this goes back to like what I was discovering and learning with like traditional healing modalities. They're like, yeah, you go take a cold plunge. That'll work on your anxiety, you know what I mean? You got like intense pain, you know, it's like, yeah, you actually can go in the salt water can actually clear that wound that you might have on your skin. And I think I started leaning into that more, like going to for me, it was like the Emeryville Marina water and the sunset right there. Pivotal moments in my young life of like, yeah, like this California sunset is something else. Like, you know, people travel around the world, they come to California, specifically the Bay Area, for those sunsets, you know? And really leaning into that, and also going back to Auntie Monica, she taught us that you make offerings, your song is an offering and you can do that. And so we had songs that were dedicated to the ocean and Yamaya, Mother Ocean, right? And all these larger than what I know conversations of energy and ancestral spirit there. But yeah, when I was just like, again, feeling right time, right place, I was like, yeah, let me sing that song Auntie Monica taught us. And I felt like offering that. And so the water could hold so much for me. And just tuning into that I was like, I might not know everything, but I'm knowing enough to just be like, hey, I'm connected right now to this living water or this living forest, you know, and I'm part of it. I'm not just like, we're not like different bubbles, right? It's not, I'm not in the water, but it's like, we are connected. She's receiving, she's helping me in that way.
We have someone online, Sochi, has a question. What are some of the plants you'll be growing this year? Any particular significance to those choices?
You know, I honestly should be getting on my planning schedule. But I've been actually growing a lot of beans. Beans are like my people's, you know, thing, but Cultural Conservatory, they do seed saving and have a seed bank there of native seeds. And at the Two Spirit Powwow for the past 3 years, I've been collecting some seeds from them. And I've been growing those, and that's been like an exciting experience to see how the flowers of frijoles turn into the beans that we eat. And it's like, what? Like we can, in my little backyard, I can do that. And it's like one bean can give you like a bag, like a handful, right? It's like how things multiply, and there's abundance there if we really look and tend to that. Yeah. I'm also gonna be growing some sunflowers as well. I have kale in my backyard right now that's doing pretty good, and I also put down a blueberry plant. Yeah, before I got my surgery, I put down a blueberry plant, and she's about to be real cute. Yeah, I'm excited.
I have one more question. Does anyone else have questions? So your stages were sapling.
Sprouting,
Sprouting.
sapling, and then I guess flourishing.
Uh-huh.
But I feel like a sapling's still not gonna lie.
That's what I was gonna say. You bounce around between them.
Mhm.
Are you always flourishing? What happens when you bounce around and you feel like you're going to one of the other places? And is there more to come? Like, those are tree ways, I think. Those are tree ways.
Yeah.
but you might be more than treaty.
Right. What's coming to mind is like the seasons, right? Like you could be a young tree for like 10 years, you know, because like how old are sequoia trees and like redwood trees? Right? They've been there for way long. So how long, you know, I guess when do you consider yourself not a sapling? I don't really know, right? But like, I think seasons of like, yeah, there are moments where I feel like I'm more focused on this type of work and like, not work, but just like I'm planting more, I'm trying to be in the lawn more. And there are moments where I'm like, I'm actually doing more youth empowerment stuff, more community organizing in other ways. So I guess following those seasons that like, yeah, in the winter, things go dormant. You know, so I'm gonna go dormant as well at some points, right? Like, and then in the spring, you're gonna catch me outside. I'm gonna be outside. You know what I mean? So following the seasons and also just knowing that, and I wanna name that this isn't just like a career change and like folks don't have to, it doesn't have to be a career. It's just like, hey, go volunteer, go be connected with the land, go look at the projects that people are doing. Stop buying your tomatoes from Safeway, like go to the farmer's market, get your chiles from the black farmers over there at what's the farmer? I'm spacing on it. The farmer, he has that fermented chilies. Yes, at the market, I'm getting them. There's a farmer at the farmer's market, he makes fermented chilies, like chili sauces, and they're amazing. But again, just being like, yeah, he has a lot of land is a lot of land. Support people. Raise roots, okay.
Which farmer's market is that?
At the Lake Merritt one, but you look him up and he has his different at different locations. And that chile is bomb. And because it's fermented, it's actually good for your gut biome. It's not just like tapatio vinegar, you know what I'm saying? Got that prebiotics. They got that prebiotics in it, so it's like a more, what you call it, a full spectrum medicine.
Yeah.
Oh, you just make more complete nutrition. Are you saying?
Yeah, another question.
Talking and sharing your story, something that struck me was how you shared about how part of, like a core part of your path and the path that you followed has had to do with relationality and your relationships, and kind of following that as a core part of where you are meant to be, like both on your learning journey with the land and perhaps even with your really remembering of your like indigenous traditions to the land and perhaps even spiritual practices. And so I was just wondering if you could talk more about just like your that value of like relationality and relationship as part of your path.
How much to say? It's just like, because people are infinite, you know, like we all have our own cosmic universes inside of us, right? Like each of us have thousands of people that have allowed us to be here today, you know? It just goes back to the seeds, like on the land is where I get the most stories. Like we didn't do this because we had that, we used to do this because this is what we only have, you know? Making it work with what you have, you know? But the most learning I think I've had is from those moments of storytelling and sharing. So it's also about being open to receive, you know, these stories from people. Sometimes it does feel kind of awkward. Sometimes in these programs, it's like maybe one of 3 visibly queer trans people in the state. But also knowing it's like, yeah, you're making eye contact with that elder in the circle. They're also learning, and there's like so much to say. I mean, even the people that I gravitated to are Spanish speakers who only speak Spanish in those spaces, because I have the gift of knowing Spanish as well. So there's a lot more learning that happens that way. I'm like, oh, we're connecting, but you're also seeing me. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm wanting to reflect that because you see me, you want to engage with me, I want to engage with you. You know, knowing that we come in from 2 different universes. You know, yeah. There's like the infiniteness of like every person is a seed, I believe, you know? We carry different stories, different living history of our peoples from around the world. And I feel like I'm just like always learning, you know, from others. So being open to that and also knowing that that is where I'd rather learn stuff from than like a professor and like, you know, kind of like the same situation here, probably a level down, you know? A lot more learning can happen outside of just an academic setting.
Any other questions from online or from the people in the room? I don't think there's other questions online.
Shout out to the homies that are online right now.
Yes, yes. I wanted to just say before we close, like, I really admire the places we go. One of the things that we've been talking about at Mills College is that these are big conversations, really big. And there's a way in which, for me, the way I would talk about it is that sometimes the space gets taken up by particular understandings of the questions and issues that are in front of us. And they get, you know, the vocabulary of like climate crisis and scientific approaches and the way certain disciplines want to approach these questions. We're talking about poetry, y'all. We're talking about seedlings and growing and taking care of ourselves and healing. This is an entirely different vocabulary. But I love it because we know that these things come to us because of how we are, who we are, what medicine we carry. I don't think it's coincidence that we're queer gente, we're two-spirit people, and we insist on it all. But that's what our ancestors did. When we look at indigenous traditions, and I know that's where you're coming from in a lot of places, in a lot of ways. These things weren't separated. Philosophy and religion and science was spirituality. Science was the heart. Science was the spirit and the water and the land. It's all jumbled up in there. And like, I want to say that's kind of, you know, that's interdisciplinarity, guys. We talk in the university about disciplines, like sociology mixed with anthropology with this. We're talking about all the world being up in it. And so I really appreciate the way that your journey has kind of raised you to this vocabulary and this perspective. It's also like in the fine tradition of feminist of color, like positionality. And when we talk about position, we're talking about those intersections of class, race, gender, all this, but also our heart and art and creativity and creation, because that's what this is creation. So I just want to thank you for bringing that to our space. Thank you for bringing it to all where you walk. Like I know you and I know our friends here, and we bring all that in all the paths that we walk, and I'm very proud of us for that. Because I have been learning in the university over the years that we have to mix it up so that somebody else's perspective gets opened up and we insist on these things being brought to the forefront. Why? Because there's good stuff everywhere, but sometimes you have to mix it up to push those boundaries within the disciplines and within the perspectives, and also push our way into the conversation. So I appreciate all the places you've gone and those organizations and the elders and the teachers. And I'm sure some of them weren't elders, they're young folks, but they've been in the dirt, right? They've been in the dirt, so they can tell you about the earth. So anyway, love to you. And thank you so much for your journey and your courage for taking all those roads. And because you're opening the paths for everyone. Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining me. Thank you, everyone. We're gonna end the Zoom.
Dance party.
Dance party. Oh yeah, it starts now.